ever catch yourself like actually thinking about the types of fats you're eating? You know, we hear so much about the good fats, the bad fats, omega-3s and all that. But what about the ones we don't really think about?
The ones that are just kind of...
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hiding in plain sight. Well, today we're diving into some seriously interesting new science. It's all about a surprising connection between one of these common dietary fats and a really tough type of breast cancer.
A preclinical study, actually, fresh out of Weill Cornell Medicine. It just got published in Science, and it's shedding some new light on linoleic acid. You've probably heard of it.
Linoleic acid, yeah.
Well, it's a super common dietary fat, and this study is suggesting a link between it and the growth of triple-negative breast cancer.
Okay, so that's what we're breaking down in this deep dive. What exactly did these researchers find, and what could it mean for us? You know, how we think about our diets in this specific cancer risk.
Yeah, we're zeroing in on triple-negative breast cancer and this linoleic acid. We'll see. It's kind of lurking in a lot of the seed oils we use every day.
So no more beating around the bush.
All right.
Let's get to the heart of it. What's the main takeaway here?
Okay, so the core finding is this. Linoleic acid seems to actually fuel the growth of triple-negative breast cancer cells. And get this, the researchers even figured out how it does it.
Ow.
By activating a very specific protein pathway inside these cells. It's pretty fascinating.
Okay, back up for a second. Linoleic acid, that's an omega-6.
You got it.
Yeah.
Omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acid.
And where do we usually find it? Like what foods?
It's concentrated in a lot of those seed oils. Soybean oil, safflower oil, you know, the kind we use for cooking and that end up in tons of processed food.
Oh yeah, those are everywhere.
Exactly. And the study also mentioned it's in some animal products too, like pork and eggs. But for most people eating a typical Western diet, the biggest source is going to be those seed oils.
Gotcha. And one more thing, just to be clear, this is a preclinical study, right?
Right. So mostly lab work with cells and animal models at this stage.
Okay, good to know. So they saw this connection, linoleic acid and this type of breast cancer. But how does it actually work? How does it make the cancer cells grow?
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. They found this protein inside the tumor cells called FABP5.
FABP5. That's right.
And what happens is the linoleic acid actually binds to it. Think of it like FABP5 is a docking station, and linoleic acid is the key that fits right in.
Okay, I'm visualizing that.
And when that key goes in, it kicks off this whole chain reaction, activating a super important growth pathway. It's called mTORC1. You can think of that as the cell's engine room for growth. And then...
So it's like linoleic acid flips the switch, turns on the engine, and the cancer cells just start growing like crazy.
You got it. And what's really remarkable is how specific it is. This whole linoleic acid, FABP5, mTORC1 thing, it seems to be way more pronounced in triple-negative breast cancer cells than in other types that are sensitive to hormones. Meaning, the triple-negative cells have a lot more of these FABP5 docking stations. So they're primed and ready to bind with that linoleic acid and trigger that growth pathway.
Wow. So the same fat could have totally different effects depending on the type of breast cancer we're talking about.
Exactly. And to see this in action, they used a mouse model of triple-negative breast cancer.
Okay, and what happened?
When the mice ate a diet high in linoleic acid, their tumors grew faster.
So they saw it happening in a living system, not just cells in a dish.
Right. Which really strengthens the link they saw in those initial cell experiments.
This all kind of brings us back to the whole Western diet thing, doesn't it? You know, all the changes in what we eat over the last few decades.
For sure. And the study authors point this out, you know, how much seed oil consumption has skyrocketed since the 1950s.
Yeah, because they're in everything.
Yeah.
Fried foods, processed foods, you name it.
Exactly. And that means we're eating way more omega-6s overall, especially linoleic acid. So, of course, people are starting to wonder if that's connected to the rise in certain diseases like breast cancer. Makes sense, right?
It does. Now, haven't there been other studies looking into this? I feel like I've heard about this link before.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But the results have been all over the place. No clear answers. And this study points out a big reason why. Nobody's really been able to nail down the exact biological mechanism. Like, how are these omega-6s actually affecting cancer development? And that's what's so cool about this new research. They're showing us the how and the why, you know, this whole FABP5 and mTORC1 thing.
Right. So they found a missing piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how they do it? How they manage to zero in on this specific pathway when other studies haven't been able to?
Well, they focused on the MTORC1 pathway because we already know it's a big deal in how cells sense nutrients and control their growth.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, and since linoleic acid is a nutrient, it made sense to see how it might be affecting this pathway. And as we talked about, what they found was that linoleic acid does activate MTORC1. But here's the key. It mainly does it in triple-negative breast cancer cells, at least in their lab models.
Right, right. Okay, before we go any further, can we just quickly explain what makes triple-negative breast cancer so different? You mentioned earlier that it's particularly challenging. Why is this whole linoleic acid link so important for this specific type?
Sure. So triple negative basically means the cancer cells don't have these three key receptors that a lot of other breast cancers do.
And those are?
The estrogen receptor, the progesterone receptor, and the HEO2 protein. And since they're missing, a lot of the targeted therapies we have, the ones that work by attaching to those receptors, well, they just don't work on triple-negative breast cancer, which makes it a lot harder to treat.
So it's kind of like we're missing our usual weapons against it.
Exactly. That's why finding a new pathway, a new target like this one with linoleic acid and FABP5 could be huge for this subtype.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So back to the study. They found this specific activation in triple-negative cells. And the key player here, like we keep saying, is this FABP5 protein.
Right. And they found that in these triple-negative cells, the linoleic acid forms a complex with FABP5. And that complex is what helps assemble and activate the whole MTORC1 machine. It's like it gives the engine room all the tools it needs to start running full speed ahead, driving cell metabolism and making those cancer cells grow.
So it's not just about the linoleic acid being there. It's about this very specific interaction with FABP5. It's like a lock and key.
Precisely. And they didn't stop there. They also found that in those mice with triple-negative breast cancer, when they ate a high linoleic acid diet, not only did their tumors grow faster, but the levels of FABP5 in the tumors also went up. And as you might expect, that led to even more MTORC1 activation. It's this whole chain reaction.
Wow. That's some pretty convincing evidence. They saw it in cells, they saw it in mice.
Oh.
What about in humans? Did they see anything similar when they looked at actual patients?
They did. They looked at tumor and blood samples from women recently diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer. And what they found was pretty interesting. The patients with higher levels of FABP5 and linoleic acid in their tumors and their blood, well, their pathway was more active too.
So again, that same chain reaction, it all lines up.
It does.
Okay, so if we're summing all this up for our listeners, it seems like this study gives us a much clearer picture of how a common ingredient in our diet, linoleic acid, could be affecting the development and growth of this specific type of cancer.
Yeah. And it's not just a general association either. They've identified the specific mechanism behind it, this FABP5 protein and this MTORC1 pathway.
Like it's huge because now we know what to target, potentially.
Exactly. And that brings us to FABP5 as a potential biomarker.
Right, you mentioned that before. How would that work?
So because FABP5 seems to be so crucial in this whole process, the researchers think that maybe we can measure the levels of FABP5 in a patient's tumor and use that to give them more personalized nutritional advice. Like if someone has high FABP5, maybe we tell them to be extra careful about how much linoleic acid they're eating, you know?
So we could tailor our dietary recommendations based on this protein.
Oh.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and even more exciting, maybe we could target FABP5 itself with new therapies specifically designed for triple-negative breast cancer. Because remember, right now, we're kind of limited in what we can do with that subtype.
Totally. So this opens up some really cool possibilities for personalized medicine. And hold on, the study wasn't only about breast cancer, was it?
Nope. They did look at a few other things, and they actually found some early evidence that this same pathway, the whole omega-6, FABP5, MTORC1 thing, might be involved in some types of prostate cancer, too.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and they even suggest it could play a role in other chronic conditions, like obesity and diabetes. But they were careful to say that we definitely need more research on those.
Of course, yeah. But still, that's pretty fascinating. Okay, so just to wrap things up and bring it all home for everyone listening, this study gives us a much more focused understanding of the link between linoleic acid, which is in a lot of seed oils, and the growth of triple-negative breast cancer. It's not just a vague idea anymore. We actually know about a specific protein, FABP5, and a key growth pathway, MTORC1, that are right in the middle of all this.
And that's a big deal, because knowing this opens up doors for developing better dietary guidelines and maybe even new therapies, all tailored for people with this type of cancer.
So given how common seed oils are in our diets, and now knowing about this link and thinking about the potential connections to other diseases like prostate cancer, obesity, and diabetes, it really gets you thinking, doesn't it? Like, what does this mean for the future of nutrition and cancer prevention? How should we be changing our approach? It's a lot to consider.
Yeah, it really is.
Definitely all to chew on. Well, thanks for breaking all that down for us. It's been an incredibly insightful deep dive.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, keep those brains buzzing, stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
See you then.